The other room?
You are recording.
There we go.
You are recording, Madam Chair.
Okay, it is 7:23 and I'll call the meeting to order. And if we can have an approval of the agenda, that would be spectacular.
So moved.
All those in favor? All right. We have two sets of minutes to review. Some of us have had the time and opportunity to look those over. So, minutes of October 7th, if anybody has any.
I move we accept the minutes of October 7th.
Second. All those in favor? Okay. And the minutes of October 28th?
I'll move we accept the minutes of October 28th.
I will second that.
All those in favor? Okay, we will mention to Simone that we spent time poring over those.
Yep, just do, because she agonized over this.
I know she did. She did an excellent job. Yes. Okay, now.
You guys have to let me get caught up here. I didn't realize I was secretary too. All right, who? John, you did first.
On both of them. Dot did the second on the
No.
October 7th.
She seconded the first one, I seconded the second one.
Which was the 28th.
I'll second the third one.
So, there'll be one stroke and one nervous breakdown.
All right. So I'm up to the minutes. All right, I'm ready to go, I guess.
Now, I have emailed this to everyone, but I don't know if everybody made a copy, so this is the, what was to be the hopefully the final draft for RD,
I got the email.
I did too.
okay, well, if you want a copy just to mark up anyway, I have them, they're gonna go to waste if we don't write on them. Anyway, this hopefully, assuming I didn't mess it up, reflects our discussion of last meeting. Residential District 1, and we still have to discuss the boundaries specifically, but basically the only changes we made that I recall were in some of the wording. Tom had an issue with one sentence and we fixed that. And then at the end where we did the animal husbandry,
Equestrian facilities.
Right, that sentence at the very end of the third paragraph, we rearranged it so it made more sense and flowed better. But we didn't change a lot of intent there. And then we reflected the same language in RD2. So basically the only difference between the two districts at this stage of the game is acreage. RD1 is 1 acre minimum and RD2 is 2 acre. And then the other big decision that we made last time was to fold, and if we turn the page, I've typed in a statement to that effect. Comprehensive Plan Review Committee is recommending that this district be eliminated as a separate district and that it be included as part of the existing R2 district, subject to the same regulations. So based upon our recommendations, R3 would no longer exist as a separate district.
And the map so reflects it, these maps so reflect it. Diana, if you want to grab one. Okay.
So any of the changes that you say, Donna, were they included in here, the changes that you talked about?
Yes, this reflects what would be the final draft of everything we've discussed to this point. In terms of any changes of language, intent, punctuation.
To thoroughly add confusion to the mix, is it too early to request that we move the R4 to R3 then, so that way
Well,
we
yeah,
have
because the R in R4 is really not residential. R4 is rural conservation. It's never been a residential district, even though we always talk about it as such. So we can rename that when we get there.
In fact, anticipating that the new zoning ordinance has it in a separate category. It's not in a residential district category. It's in a mixed use district category.
Okay. All right, but we will cross that bridge when we get there. Now, Or blow it up and extract the minerals.
Someone pushed me out there a long time ago.
John raised a question regarding the Eastern Trail and its spot in R1. So you want to pick it up from there?
Yeah, I can't add too much to what I sent everybody in that email, but I did think it was worth a little discussion to see if we could do something to sort of guarantee access to the trail. I think the trail is an asset to the community, and if we keep it strictly residential, and the only realistic access area, which is off Limerick Road, essentially we have, a nice facility that nobody can really get to because of very limited parking and no other facilities. I didn't have the time, since I got your email, to generate any kind of formal proposal, but I did recall that some time ago Tad had mentioned the possibility of creating a small commercial zone around the trailhead. So I talked to him yesterday, and he had a map of what he was going to propose back along. So we could get a look at that.
That's what this is. Basically, the area in question is on off Limerick Road. And this is a quick drawing of it. Essentially Talbot Drive, Campground Road, the Eastern Trail's in red. This is Limerick Road here. Mountain Road is right up here. And so you can see it's the basic area we're looking at is this basic area here. This is land that, land in this case is actually owned only by 3 property owners. And the concept was to be able to have basically a neighborhood commercial district, small neighborhood commercial district, to serve the urban residential, the R1 district, as it grows, provide services for them, and also to provide and have direct access to the Eastern Trail to pick up on that market as it grows, essentially to provide services to those on the Eastern Trail, but also to basically be a small commercial area for the entire Limerick Road and R1, R2 district area. So it was sort of like as I said, very small residential, small commercial, providing services necessary for residences and probably some specialty stuff, probably on a seasonal basis for the Eastern Trail. The big thing was this is one of the few places that we have in the town. In fact, it's just about the only place we have in the town where we have the Eastern Trail near what could be called an arterial road, what we define as an arterial road, where there's adequate access to that arterial road. And there is no current strong residential development around it. There are some residences on this side of the Eastern Trail, but on this side, this is all open fields, and that's just one residence back there.
Has anyone approached the one that owns the field?
Oh, yeah.
To the Eastern Trail?
Oh, sure.
Well, no, I mean recently, since she had the auction of all of the stuff from the house.
Yeah.
And she still doesn't want to.
She doesn't, but who knows what happens with the heirs. Apparently, there's not a big push in the family to live here. So, I think her plan was always to sell it for residential to various select developers who if they wanted to take it. But this was floated to the planning board as one of the concepts of we originally talked about neighborhood commercial districts, providing opportunities for small scale stuff within the denser residential areas, so people wouldn't travel all over heck and back to get the services if they wanted to. But as I said, the Eastern Trail, if we look at the map for, let me use this. And they only have 3 3 of these pins. So.
Isn't there one behind the map?
There you go.
All right.
All right.
No.
If you notice here, the Eastern Trail is basically this corner right here. And the issue we have with the Eastern Trail is the entire BI district butts up against it. But the accessibility is limited. You talk about wedge.
Really, that's the quarry, see?
Yes, this is the quarry.
Yeah.
That really is the quarry area. And you know, here's where the seasonal residential will be. There's no real access. The only real access is over here, across Hidden Meadows, and then Bass Lane over here, and those are all developed residential areas right now. So the only real access on this side is, you know, through over the.
So there's no
through the
access
woods.
to BI at all?
No, well, no. It's just very difficult to get back up into there because it's all ledge and wetlands. Very, very difficult to get to. And then Mountain Road here, we have established residential neighborhood. I mean, the only thing other that we have is the Olivers here. The other thing about the BI, and this can be overcome, but it's always fun to play with Unitil on this, is the pipe is on the east side of the trail through here. And Unitil is very, very reticent to let anybody even walk across that side. They always want us to shut down those people who actually go out of their backyards and walk and access the trail from their backyards. For instance, they want us to put up some sort of fence to prevent Talbot Woods folks from walking across the pipe because they could damage it. So that's
There is so
Silly,
much wrong
John,
with
that's
that.
silly.
They should have done a better job burying it.
That's, if walking across it is going to damage it, then
if you
that
know
is a
how
problem.
shallow that pipe is, in many
It's-
places,
I don't know
it
about
is
that.
very, very shallow. In the other places, it's very deep, but in very places, it's
They
shallow.
make it.
And
Jeez,
they
it
have
just discouraged me from walking down Eastern Trail.
So on the east side, stay off the east side. That's the way they are. I mean, that's just
the way they are.
that's the way you have to do it.
Here's the beginning of your mining operation.
No kidding. Well, certainly, let's blast. But as you can see, so the only really good places that we have for this are here and here, where we're on the west side of the trail and the pipeline, and we have access to Limerick Road, which is an arterial. That is in fact an arterial. So it made sense since it was the confluence of three major roads. I mean, Campground, and Limerick, and Mountain Road's right up there too. Yeah. So it is pretty much the confluence of that. So it's one of those areas that's in a center, that's away from the basic Route 1 corridor that we've been looking at, or the 111 corridor. It's sort of like right here is a little residential node that can provide services to this dense area. And that's what was proposed. And frankly speaking, one of the provisions we were trying to do with this also was to make sure that we could get some parking for our residents of the Eastern Trail. So you've got commercial, you got parking. One of the requirements is that you have to provide X number of parking spaces that can be used by trail people as one of your requirements. Then we could also have some make sure that residents have access to the trail. And this is back before the selectmen, bit the bullet and expanded the shoulder.
If this were to be something that got, let's look, a decade or two down the road. What, you're referring to services for that local residential community. What services would you expect to be there?
I would imagine probably some convenience materials would probably be there. Probably convenience store, small convenience store.
So we're looking at small retail.
Small retail, ice cream shop, maybe small restaurant, food service there.
Bike repair
No
shop.
gas
A bike repair shop would obviously be there. Whether Brandon goes there or not, I doubt it, because Brandon calls himself Kennebunkport. He strike too much from Kennebunkport. But actually, it's a much better place for him to go. Bike repair, anything like that. Ski. I mean, the side businesses would be ski rentals, obviously food, obviously bike repair and so forth. But I mean, for local residences, any convenience kind of item that could be there, or specialty, so it's a
We
destination.
do a brewery, like a microbrewery?
All right, so.
I'm going for that. I'm good. Didn't we talk about this before we started the meeting, about how to get people to attend meetings? That would be the place we could have our top plan meetings in tenure.
And
A meeting,
I've just
a
got this
meeting
mental
place.
picture of people on bicycles on the Eastern Trail, having spent some time at the microbrewery, but moving right
I
along.
think that.
And at least there would not be motor vehicles on the main roads.
That's.
And the other thing
yes,
is-
you've got-
That certainly would increase the potential for having bed and breakfasts for those guys. Oh, I had a little too much, huh? Tough to
All right.
give those narrow
Let's-
lanes on that trail.
In the interest of actually getting something done tonight, sorry, I'm just as bad as anybody else. Let's make a short list of the general categories. So we've got small retail. Microbrewery would count, is that still small retail? Assuming-
Service, that would be food service. Food service,
Eateries,
small
right?
retail, yeah, restaurants. Food service, restaurants. Any kind of service. I mean, frankly speaking, okay, it may not be trail related, but you can have personal services in there. It's probably a good place for masseurs. No Zumba.
I think this district
Sorry,
is going to
Sean.
need a very special name.
It's gonna be a hard sell for some of those neighbors too.
Sure.
All right, so
But we're looking at the future.
food service, restaurant, personal service, small retail.
There's only one that's resident now.
Anything else?
Offices, obviously. Liability, good place for an attorney, liability attorney.
See, I think you're going too far.
Yeah, I do too. I
You've gone
think
way
we're-
too far. I can see maybe a little tiny convenience store by the Eastern Trail.
That has
Maybe
maybe
the-
a couple of
maybe the
tables, some
bike
chairs,
repair.
some seats.
You know, maybe they could do, sandwiches or something there, but I don't see restaurants in this area because I think the neighbors in this area are not going to be happy about going that far.
Well, you gotta put general categories. I mean, we're not talking about. Obviously, you're not going to be putting Bailey's seafood there because, quite frankly, there's not enough market for that. I think it would be small eateries. Yeah, I think it would be very small. I think the market will determine how small it is. You can put a minimum on that, which the planning board has been very happy to do. Although their minimums have been pretty maximum recently. But
No, we're really talking about putting a maximum on it.
yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Maximum, and their maximum, pretty maximum.
I think that's something we may be discussing with them when we have our joint meeting next
Yeah,
week.
I think that's a good thing to discuss with them on the 11th.
Yes.
And it is. There's
So
certain
this
things.
is this R1?
It's R1, yeah.
It's our one.
So it's our smallest area. It's where we wanted to push everybody to put their houses.
Yep. But isn't that that's where you have neighborhood stores?
Well,
Yeah,
we
neighborhood
had, I
commercial.
remember on the last committee, we had big discussions about convenience stores in these areas. And-
Well, this really isn't the case of putting convenience stores in a residential area. This is the one chance we have to secure access to the Eastern Trail. And if we don't do something now, then that trail doesn't develop at all.
You're not
We,
gonna have
we
a
don't
gas
do
station.
any access. Number one, we're not gonna do access. We're simply gonna say that in the comp plan, it would allow for these things in that area. We're not accessing anything unless somebody wants to come up with the money and be able to buy it from the person that owns it. There is no access unless you want to buy
Well,
somebody's house.
I mean, that's true with anything you do.
Yeah, I mean, except for the fact that if some of these things were allowed, then that would give businesses or business owners reason to buy the land to do these things.
Right, and I
If-
understand
if
that.
all-
It's the way they worded it, saying that but no, we're not accessing anything. We're just making it possible
Right.
for people to do certain things within this area. But I think that we need to use caution because we've pushed everybody to put their houses in this area. And there are quite a few of them. Talbot Woods doesn't even like anybody from the Eastern Trail ever coming around. So
They all have accesses directly onto it.
having access there because it's your house and having everybody park in your area is, and walking through your property is different story.
But this would actually solve that problem, because it would push everybody to the other side of the Limerick Road.
Yeah.
Right, and I'm saying, I don't have any objections to that, I'm just saying that we have to use caution as to how big and how many things we allow in that area, because these people still have their houses in this area. This is not, I don't want it to become, excuse me, party central, because these people that live in this area are not gonna support that.
I can tell you from experience that it's already party central because you've got everybody and his brother coming out of Bentleys on a motorbike, roaring by there at about 300 decibels. So this is not a nice peaceful area in the summer on the weekend. It is horrible on a Sunday afternoon.
Friday, Saturday. No argument there.
But there's a difference
Right.
between them roaring through and staying.
There's not much when you got 100 bikes in a row because it's just like one bike sitting outside for 15 minutes.
And you don't even have a stop sign. All right, back up a bit. Way back in one of our first meetings, we talked about the idea of thinking of the town as a series of neighborhoods. And conceptually, that seems to kind of work. And as we talked about the mixed-use districts, they sort of became focal points for some of those potential neighborhoods. So the Alfred Road district is certainly a potential neighborhood. If we just look at the geography of this, that spot's about halfway between any place and any other place. It's pretty centrally located.
It's
It
very
would-
centrally located in that southern R1.
Yes, it would be an ideal place for such a little neighborhood. How big is the open area there acreage wise? Give or take 50 acres,
It's less than that, it's about
30 acres. So we're not looking at a tremendous amount of area that could, certainly we're not putting it in but, a convenience store, a quote unquote corner store, a couple of small businesses.
coffee shop.
Yeah, might do very well there if the business owners thought the potential was there in terms of clientele. And if the potential isn't there, they're not going to invest the money and open it up.
Yeah.
So,
And I
If
agree.
the owners
with-
don't wanna do it, it ain't gonna happen anyway.
right.
What's that? Todd?
And if the owners don't wanna do it, it's not gonna happen anyway.
Yes.
So it hinges A on availability of the land, and then B availability of a profit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can see coffee shops, I can see a little, like a corner store, I can see a bike repair place. I don't see a microbrewery or anything like that in that area. Restaurants would have to be small.
We had a microbrewery up from 35 opening some farm.
Yeah, I can see a microbrewery.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I
Right up from 35 in the backyard.
Well, I don't have
Probably
a,
want
I
to
don't
see
have
it.
I don't have a problem with it, but I think the neighbors might have a problem with it.
Well, if we don't propose it, we'll never find out.
well, I guess that's
Right.
Again, it's all contingent on we can recommend anything we want and be shot down like ducks on opening day. So,
Which has never happened, of course.
oh, geez, no. So, let's pursue this another step. If we were going to make such a proposal, we would have to separate this area out as a separate district. It would become mixed-use district number 87. We're going to make the planning board suicidal, but that's not my problem.
That's mine.
So all right, what that means is that does not substantially, or even in a small way, change what we have for R1, R2, R3. All it does is pull a geographical area out, and then we can address that
That specific area.
specific area as another mixed-use district. It's gonna need a name, but we can come up with one, I'm sure. So, do we... Yeah.
Called
Trailhead.
Eastern Trail Gateway District.
Trailhead
Yeah,
District?
Yeah,
Trailhead
that's what I
District.
wanted to put trail. I would
That-
take the R1s, that's too confusing, name it something like.
Well, all our mixed-use districts have special names, right, yeah. So that, all right, Trailhead District. So are we in agreement that we want to pursue some language to describe that? Not necessarily tonight, but we can put that
Yep.
down as on our to-do list?
You know, we break that out as a separate section, or do we want to include that into the description of the R1 with Trailhead District?
I think it would fall under the mixed-use district list.
Can you buy the camera set?
Smile when you go by. So it would be, we're up to mixed-use district 6 now, which would be the Trailhead District. We're good with that?
Good with that?
Okay.
I'll bring some to the next meeting.
Trailhead Brewery.
There is Long Trail beer, Long Trail ale.
Feather on it. And Ted, if the next time around, whenever we address that as an agenda item, if you could do a map to define the boundaries. And then we can discuss the particulars. Okay. The language should be relatively easy, because we've kind of been through that with the other one.
Yes.
So, it'll just be a matter of defining the uses. Cool. All right. We're still technically on A, final review of R1, R2. Another day. No.
You missed us haggling over the minutes, that's what you missed.
Yeah, we changed 4 semicolons, it was terrible. Revision of district boundaries. So, we're going with the map, is that
Well, yeah,
is that
I'm
it?
sorry
That's
again,
the
I
story
could not
of
be
our
the
life?
big one, but if you take your little map and you
Imagine
compare it to the
it
big
much
map,
bigger.
what we basically have is neatening up the districts. It's really not much different. What we did was take off some of these corners, places where people are getting shut down. Yeah, for instance, the Alpine line here is back in. This section is back in the R1, and then we have the only place I didn't make. I made some changes here to include this and this line, put them all in the R1 district. Cleaned up this line here on the I assume we put them in the R2 district because half of it is in the R1 and R2. I didn't want to do that. Cleaned up the lines here on Mountain Road. Big cleanup over on the BI and the DB1 district. You'll note because this line does not match what was written in the ordinance. This map line is supposed to be here.
Aha.
Okay. Because this makes no sense whatsoever.
Right, chops it
Yeah.
right down.
Chops it up,
Yep.
it makes no sense. But in reading the description basically shows, and measuring it out, it's actually supposed to be out here, not here.
All right, so it's at the upper end of those properties as
upper end of
opposed
these
to
properties.
cutting them in half.
The only
So
thing
that's not the map with the corrected lines.
No, this is the map with the corrected lines. And those corrected lines, you'll note there's a big wedge of BI going in. That's the septic system for the seasonal cottages. Yeah. And then you'll notice there's an island of R1 here.
Yep,
Essentially, that is
that's Fritz.
that's Fritz.
Yep.
And that was a negotiation the planning board made with Fritz. And also the BI at Fritz comes down. Right now it's in the CCS district, and the planning board said, fine, we'll put it in the BI district. You know, it's not a big deal. So that line is a little, it's not as clean
So
down,
where did
but
Fritz
it's pretty
end up?
good.
He's
Is that yellow?
He's that little yellow square.
Yeah, that's his personal property, son-in-law's.
But the business is in the BI.
The business is the BI.
What's that purple one in back of them though? It doesn't make any
That's
sense.
the
to me.
septic system.
This dark,
For
this one here?
seasonal cottages.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cottages is the septic system. That's why
But-
that's there.
Okay. No, that makes sense.
The map doesn't have to look pretty as long as it's accurate.
Yeah.
That's the key thing, is this follows property
Okay.
lines.
Right, so if the planning board looks at it and says, you are this little yellow square, then they know what district, and if you're the little gray square, you're the
No, and I
next.
know that there was an issue about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so,
And I didn't change any of the boundaries in the R3 district because the boundaries are actually pretty darn clean. If you notice them, they follow natural features. The railroad's a big feature. You know, it's not negotiable. You'll notice that also it follows Old Post Road. One side is R2, one side is R3. It's all, well, it's all now R2,
Yeah.
so we don't have the funk. It basically, so the east side of R2 is the railroad, and then it's Gosnell Brook.
yeah.
So that's a pretty uniform, good boundary to follow. There's no reason to change that. It doesn't cut any lots in half. The only place where we still have a little bit of the funk is along R1 on Limerick Road.
Yeah,
And the reason there for doing that is because I think I can't project it because we can't project right now. But you might recall I showed you the soils maps. And there is a line in there in which this is sort of a generalized interpretation of where we move from usable upland soils into floodplain soils associated with Kennebunk River. So it's really bad back there. It's a lot of non-birds and scantics, and it actually gets pretty unusable. So the question is, I mean, zoning is supposed to be based on carrying capacity of the land. Do we keep this, or do we go with property lines? Because if we do these property lines, we're going all the way to the river with some of these properties.
or we're going the other direction, and they'd be in R4 right up to the Limerick Road.
Yeah, but I'll tell you that there's good soils along the Limerick Road. Not in every location, but there's good pockets of Crogans. There's some Adams soils in there. You can build on where Pam Drew is. That's fine. It's an upland there. She's got some gravel in there or some good sandy silt in there, and you know it varies a little bit. But that line's pushed fairly far back. I can try to. The soil maps, as you know, are medium intensity, which means they're good guesses with not a lot of field verification. They were done back in the 60s, back by the Soil Conservation Service, and they're a good indicator. I mean, what I can do is try to define that a little better by field conditions. Come up with a line that's a little better, but that is based on X number of feet from the road on that side, and it's not that bad.
Would that not be an area where it would make sense to call in the landowners and say, this is where you are, this is what you've got, where do you want to be? You know, do you
Well, I
wanna
mean,
keep us-
they're going to want to go to the river. I wouldn't blame them. I would. I'd say, give me R1 all the way to the river. But I'd also say,
Some of them don't want to go to the river.
Right,
and then, well, the fact is, frankly, zoning is based on where you want things. It's also based on the ability of the land to support it. And let me tell you, you can't put 1 acre zoning back in. You can't.
all right, well, let's back that up.
But we can't put 1 acre zoning in most of R4 either.
Let's play the devil's advocate game again. Let's say I'm one of those people that has a piece of land that extends from the Limerick Road all the way to the river, and I'm currently split.
Right.
Okay, and you say to me, where do you want to be? Now, either I already know, or you can tell me what the soils are like. And I say, no, I want it to be R1 all the way to the river. But because the soils are lousy for the last 2/3 of it, I still can't build on an acre.
So you want to pay for R1 lands when you can only build on 5 acres?
Would that not,
or not at all?
Would that perhaps change my decision once I was aware of that? Yeah.
Yeah, Beth, that actually assesses you that way.
I was just going to say, you're not assessed on that
No, you're
potential
not.
of your
No,
land.
you're
It
not.
doesn't
No,
matter.
no,
So,
that's-
but even with that explanation, leave taxes out of it. You say to me, there's no advantage for you in terms of potential house lots to make it all R1 because you can't. The land won't sustain it. then that might change my decision, or I might say, no, I still want to be in R1, because maybe 20 years from now the technology will be such that I can. You know, I still see that as a landowner decision, as opposed to the arbitrary line down the middle of my backyard.
Or else we base it on where the good soils are, and we put R1 where the good soils are, and R4 where they are.
Well, that's gonna,
That's my nightmare.
yeah.
I would try to keep it on the property lines, and I kind of agree with Donna, give the property
You're not
owners
looking at
the
a ton,
choice.
right? You're not looking at a ton.
Mm.
No,
No,
no, it's really just that stretch from the
I think it's a
the
good
turnpike, no, not the the turnpike south.
Um,
And a lot of those are small lots anyway, right along Limerick Road, so they're out of the mix, they're all in R1, they're staying there. So
it's mostly from the Eastern Trail south, Donna, isn't it?
Oh, sorry,
I don't think we've
yes.
got much of
Yeah.
a problem
Yeah,
up
that's
toward the
Eastern
center.
Trail.
Right.
well, there's one, just, no, that's the one we were just discussing, that kills that anyway. Yeah, so you're looking at, what, half a dozen?
You do have some by the turnpike though, right along here. I guess, is that, yeah, that would be the turnpike right here. Am I wrong?
This
Yes,
is
that's
the, this is
one.
the turn, that's
Right,
the
so the
turnpike.
turnpike, so you do have some big lots between the turnpike and the Eastern Trail. Pretty much all along the river there, you do.
Yeah, except that this,
You gotta look
if that's
up.
the Eastern Trail, this is the one we were just discussing
Right.
about making a
Right.
new mixed-use district.
Oh.
So that one, that's out of the mix,
So
and that's really the
most of it, yeah, most of the
that's-
larger lots are
Okay.
south of the Eastern Trail.
Right,
Yeah,
And
so-
then they go to Indian Acres, and then,
Right, and then on the other side, you do have, after the Blueberry Farm, you have like a large, right across from Burt Calkin, you've got a large piece of land right there.
yeah, that's,
Yeah.
that's, what's the name of that?
Yeah, Richardson Crest.
Dragonfly Meadows.
Yeah, and they want a lot of money for that. Massachusetts.
Well, but that's irrelevant anyway,
Right,
that's.
yeah,
that's
already
because-
on one.
That's, they have internal problems with some wetlands there, but it's in general, what you have is, this, the reason why this is R1 in there is you've got a fairly good high range of Adams and Crogan soils in there. And that's why we had gravel pits in there, quite frankly.
But the
And
bottom
Welch,
line
and we
is,
had
they're all in
existence.
They're
R1,
already
so
there.
they're not a
They're
split
already
lot,
No,
they're
they're
nothing to
split.
worry
So we're not
about.
discussing them.
They-
It's the bigger
It's-
ones.
It's only the bigger ones along
They're
Limerick.
they're split.
Right,
Okay.
yeah, just this,
Yeah.
this little section right in here.
Absolutely.
Well, this
I
one, I
say,
have
I
walked
say
the
get,
entire
there's
parcel.
not too many, I say get their input.
Yep,
I think that line's very generous, that lot, because I've walked that entire lot back and forth. That's a generous location.
so can we do that, contact those landowners and invite them to a sit down and?
Okay.
Because, can I bring up one real quick, I wanna move one, but wouldn't cluster housing apply to this? If it all got put to R1, and even though I couldn't access all the way to the river, I could still potentially put that many houses, cluster them with open space. Am I right in saying that?
If they're identified as wetlands, no, because we have
It's only
net
municipal
residential
property.
density, so it's based on density of developable lands. So lands without hydric soils on it, lands that are less than 25% slopes, and lands that are not cut off by strange configurations and other things like that, that's the only land that you do your density from. So you take your parcel of land.
Got it.
And you map out all your wetlands, and you map out any slopes
Slopes
over
and-
25%, and you map out any pavement that exists there, and that's subtracted, and then you
But
do
it
your
could
density.
potentially
Yeah, I mean, if
allow
you have
these people
pockets.
to, and that's why I would make sure they understand that too, because it probably would give them a possible house lot or two.
Might,
Tad, it could. It could,
Yeah.
because soils haven't been done.
And remember, the only use of land is not to build a house. There are other things you can do with land. You know, and like that's why I think that people should be allowed to look at the facts. This is where we are. We're going to make a decision. It's your land. You make the decision for us. We're happy with that.
Right.
But you know, that way they don't have a split lot.
Okay.
See, even they liked the idea.
They did. I think you got it right.
Either that or they did. I don't know which one. Hooray, we stopped the conversation.
I try to be positive.
I think so. Okay. All right, so I will it's actually a very small group of people.
Yeah.
So when do you want to do that?
Well,
So it could be the
oddly
11th.
enough, that moves us right on to B. And here it is, only
Schedule.
April 2. Our first meeting in January, does that work?
January 6th?
That would be the one.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So January 6th, I got to do a public. I got to do a notification.
If that doesn't give you enough time.
No, that's enough. Right?
Okay.
I'm looking at.
Bring cookies to their door and hand them.
Take your Girl Scout with you.
I'll say there's going to be beer.
Cider, whatever, you know, we are in the cider.
Yes, we've approved a microbrewery.
That's right, yeah.
Sean's Microbrew, Trailhead Microbrew.
That's where I'm at, I'm telling you, I'm all over it.
It's got potential. Yeah, it does. It does.
Okay, are we good?
We do everything?
Well, we're at B. Now we're going on to C.
Oh.
Would you like a copy of
I
the
thought we were
agenda,
done.
Ted?
Yeah, I didn't put one in my, I don't want the pig. Oh, they're all the pigs.
Of course. It's a herd of pigs.
I was a tad bit lost there.
If anything, it's worth it for the pig. I can cut it out later and send it to Tom.
Well, he'll get it when he gets here. Found
You'll
a
have to
great,
explain the pig to us sometime. The pig and Tom.
to whom?
I don't know anything about it.
Nobody
I'm
understands.
definitely
it.
lost.
Well, this has been going on since almost the first meeting when we were discussing animal husbandry. And Tom was all upset one night about the fact that he could have a pig farm next to him.
Ah, sorry.
And I was trying to explain to him, you know, that pigs didn't have to be the way their reputation, it depends on how you raise them. So he was having such a difficult time with the concept of pigs, it's now his animal. And he's never going to get away from it. And
That's his talisman. Huh?
I found a great, it's a little foam pig, and he's got a hole in his tummy, and you put foam balls in, oh no, hole, it's his mouth. You squeeze his tummy in a foam ball. But I don't know if Tom's worth $10 to me yet. He'll be on a few more
Certainly
committees.
facial expressions on the camera wouldn't go.
Anyway, in preparation for our meeting with the planning board, and I had said that, you know, I was going to take a shot at this. This is a draft, so we can tear it apart.
Thank you.
But this is to give the planning board something in writing to explain to them why we made the decisions that we've made in our proposal. So this is basically a combination of intent and rationale. Overall intent of these proposed changes to R1, R2, and R3 is to make the permitted uses, including conditional uses / restrictions, more appropriate to the actual parcels included in the districts. The original district boundaries, drawn largely as straight lines, include many split lots. In some cases, those lots are split between very different districts, such as R3 and BI, or R1 and R4. Many, approximately 100 large lots, 10 plus acres, exist in these districts where the ordinance is designed to address much smaller 1 and 2 acre lots with close proximity to neighbors, with corresponding high likelihood of conflicts of use. These proposed changes will bring some relief to owners of larger parcels regarding potential use of their property. Name changes for clarity and consistency. Urban residential to RD1.
No, I like the little pig's chair.
There's one right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's one right there. Yeah, pig agenda.
That's a different pig. Okay, we are now here. Okay. Urban residential to residential district 1, suburban residential to residential district 2, R3 eliminated and merged with residential district 2. Rationale, insignificant differences distinguishing it from R2, identical acreage requirements, 2 acre lots, and similar uses allowed. Boundaries, our recommendation is to follow lot lines wherever feasible. Rationale, to eliminate split lots, allow and encourage current landowners to decide which district they prefer to be in. And conditional uses in R1 and R2, expand conditional uses to include animal husbandry, more than 5 animal units, equestrian facilities, agritourism, and restricted contractor storage yards. The rationale: numerous large lots, 10 plus acres, exist in residential districts which are limited to uses aligned with 1 and 2 acre lots in close proximity to neighbors. Larger lots allow for these uses without negative impacts. This also responds to the needs / requests of some current landowners. And allow age-restricted housing developments and congregate care facilities, the rationale to reinforce the compact neighborhood concept. So I guess my questions are twofold. One, does that accurately represent for the rest of you the reasons that we did what we did? And two, did I leave anything out that we could add to this to explain why we did what we did?
I think that's a pretty good write-up of what we did, as far as if we left anything out, I can't remember.
Will we be telling him about the Eastern Trail District that you guys decided on tonight?
Well, you've missed all that.
I know, so are you gonna add that to this?
No, because that's going to be a new mixed-use district, and will be discussed at a later date.
Oh, okay.
We thrashed around with the idea that, is it reasonable to address that? But we're not addressing it tonight, so.
Okay.
Besides, I'll make their heads explode.
Quick summary. Yes.
Let's get this done.
We're gonna save that for the big finish.
Right.
Yes.
Surprise.
So if you are all comfortable with that as the basis for our joint meeting with them next week, then I'll.
Do you want to take the storage out of the contractor storage yards?
Good point.
I keep noticing that, it's not supposed to have a storage, it's just supposed to be contractor yards, right? In the land use
Okay.
Yeah,
ordinance.
but I keep calling it that.
You could
That's
call
why
it
Donna
storage,
keeps
but it should
writing
not
that.
have
That's where I-
Storage?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
storage is gone on that. It's actually contractor yard because I thought storage was not
Oh,
going
then I
to be
got-
received by this.
I've got to take it out of the other one as well, so thank you for catching that.
Oh, and
In
the other
in the other
Yeah.
description.
Contract
Yeah, it
yards.
should not have storage
Okay.
on it.
As long as that's been brought up, I do have a question. When we discussed the contractor yards in R2, Bud LeGros brought up a particular businessman who has moved his operation, or is in the process of moving it to an R2 location. And his understanding was that he'd be allowed to do that when he sold the property that's currently on 111 in Biddeford. I would not think we would want to propose something here that would disallow him from doing that, since his business plan and everything is set up so he can. And that had to do with whether it was contractor yard 1 or 2.
He's going to Route 1?
No, he's on 111, and he's going into R2. He's already got the property there and some of his equipment.
Well, right now, we don't have contractor yards. So,
Well, whatever. His current situation, I can't account for, but Bud was discussing the fact that that's what he was going to be doing. And I don't know what the story is going to be in terms of what we're proposing. Does that mess things? Do you know to whom I'm referring?
no.
Does logging?
Okay.
Bullion.
Oh, Boyer wants to go there? Where's he want to go?
Well, where he's living now, which is.
I don't know where that is.
Off the old
Off
Alfred Road?
Old Alfred Road, I believe, yeah.
Bowyer Lane, Bowyer.
So he's
Probably that operation would not be allowed, and it probably wouldn't be allowed in the new zone either. Because it's a small operation in the R1 and R2. A large operation is based on larger lots. And see, the thing right now is that,
It's got quite a bit of acreage there.
well, I mean, I'll have to look at it again, but the thing the planning board fought over, and it took us 6 months to do that, was the question of impact to neighbors, and
Yeah.
neighborhoods. And they've got a fairly large operation, and they have, I'm not sure they'd be able to, with their existing fleet, they're not gonna be able to pull it off. because there's limitations on the fleet that you can have in the contractor yards. And remember, these are contractor yards in residential
Yeah,
districts.
no, I
It's a
understand.
full big operation.
I don't know
On
how we
X-
would
on-
think that he'd be able to put that there.
But I'm not sure how many he keeps at home as well, compared to, I don't think they're all at that yard on 111.
He's giving up more.
I
That's
think
what you
he's-
said.
Oh, yeah, he has more, believe
Oh,
me.
he has
He did the
lots.
logging next to me, it was,
He has a tremendous amount of facility. I mean, he's not a small operator.
No.
Right, but
no.
I'm just saying, he
big
probably has some of that already in Arundel.
That's what you said.
Yeah, well, right now, we don't have contractor yards in Arundel.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing this to try, we were trying to do this to help the guys who are at the
Electrician.
home occupation level,
Yep.
so they don't have to all move to Route 111. So it's a transitional thing. It's not meant to be a business in the middle of, large business in the middle of residential, and frankly speaking, the new contractor yard, I don't think it's gonna help them. I think he's
Well,
just
that was
too
really,
big.
that was my question.
Yeah, I think it's too big. And I'm doing this from memory because I don't have it in front of me.
these
But
is
if you remember
tractor
that
trailer
list,
trucks.
yeah. Well, the logging trucks. Remember, those things are designed. Those are all four-wheel drive vehicles. They're designed to go out through
With multiple axles. and I
most
think some of them
multiple
with.
axles. Yeah, they're like
with an
four
axle
axles
restriction.
in those.
Mm,
There's very strong axle restrictions. And I think it's one is the most you can have in a four-axle vehicle, if I'm not mistaken. The planning board just
Not to
beat
mention,
us.
wouldn't it be like frost heaves, and certain times a year, he wouldn't even be able to kind of.
Well, it all depends what Roger posts.
Yeah.
Roger does post, and
He could be like, right?
All right, well,
now that's that they need to talk to me. More importantly, they need to talk to Jim. Talk to me and Jim about this. Before he
Well,
sells
yeah.
his property.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, actually, we have to see him. If I see him, I'll talk to him because they've got a lot of information to talk about. So, I will. If I see him, but if you spread out, if anybody else wants to talk to him or has contact with him, please tell him.
it
because
was
I
just,
wanna make that
something that was
decision.
kind of stuck in my head from several
No,
meetings
me
back
too.
when
I
Bud
was
brought
there
it up,
too,
and I
yeah.
said, I wonder, I don't know
So I was
what,
looking at that 5-acre parcel that's on, yeah, I think I know that.
I see, I don't, I just know that it
It's
exists,
on that corner, in fact.
so, okay. All right, anything else we need to, deal with? Did you have any problem with the R1, R2 description as we
No,
did it?
I read that.
I just wanted to double check.
Yeah.
Okay,
It covered everything we covered in that meeting.
all right. Well, that
Tom,
takes
did
us,
you get to that?
No,
These are the Matlin bond
there's
issues.
also minutes there, that-
okay, thank you.
several piles of things. Okay, R4. I did the same thing with the R4 description from the comp plan that I did with the others. I took the two sections and I blended them together. This one is also fascinating. Stick together.
I guess we're not gonna pass it like cake.
Nope, you weren't on fire. Thank you.
Pat's cake.
Okay.
Pat's me.
Me neither, it was cake. That and what Trailhead beer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
All right, this is the information, and I didn't do much of anything by way of changing it except blend it together, so there's no intent changes. But what came from section B, or page B6 is in regular font, and what came from C7 is in italics. And there's one spot where it basically doesn't even agree with itself. In the third paragraph up from the bottom, you're gonna see something in parentheses, and that's where I had to do a little editorial license, because that phrase belongs to B6, but it didn't fit in the sentence with C7, so I left it there, but it kind of got canceled out. And the suggested additional uses I put at the bottom just as a matter of consistency with what we've done, but they were just sort of reminder notes. I guess I can get rid of the word storage. Could have saved a lot of ink if I'd done that.
This one have little storage, this one have storage too.
So what we're looking at here is basically, you know, it's not a residential zone in intent, it's a rural conservation zone or district. Minimum acreage is 3. Still can have subdivisions even though they're discouraged, et cetera, et cetera.
But I mean, if you,
all those other people.
I know.
yeah, because I mean, if you look at the map and you look at the subdivisions that have come over since,
Oh, yeah,
they're
Well,
all in our
Well,
core.
see, yeah, that's the problem. Whatever the intent was here in terms of
It's
the
not
rural
working.
conservation, it's not working.
Right.
Now, I don't know that we're going to be able to come up with the magic bullet that makes it work,
You can work on it.
but maybe we can make some progress. So, I would almost like to start with the last paragraph. Town should work with land trusts and state agencies and should establish and fund a program for acquisition of the development rights. That should be deleted, because the town should have nothing to do with funding any of that.
And we've never done it, it's never been.
No.
And it's
in the
not
budget
likely to
anywhere.
happen.
It's never
Right.
No.
Never gonna happen.
So, town should work with land trusts and state agencies, that's nice, but should establish and fund a program for acquisition of the development rights from willing sellers, no. Now, I didn't make copies, because quite frankly, I didn't think we'd get to it, but we do have a proposal that was put forth in May 2009 for a transfer of development rights program, and I'll have that, I'll make copies for next time. But basically, the TDR proposal that's been sort of, you know, on everybody's computer since 2009 and has gone no further than that, made it a transaction strictly between buyer and seller, so to speak. So if Dot has her 10 acres in R4 and she wants to sell 3 acres as part of the transfer of development rights program and then keep that 3 acres open permanently, somebody in R1 who's in a position to utilize those development rights negotiates with Dot and says, okay, for X amount of money, I'll buy the development rights. So you get the money for the land just as if you had sold it and somebody put up a house, and the person, the developer, Route 1, gets to put more buildings on the acreage that he has, increasing that density. That's the concept behind it. But that negotiation, from beginning to end, the developer has to find Dot, Dot has to find the developer, they do all the negotiation, money is exchanged between the two of them, and the town has nothing to do with it.
Well,
It
has to have something.
The only thing the town has to do is the town is aware of the fact that this has been done. There is a deed that says that, and the town then is in the enforcement position of making sure that Dot never does anything on those 3 acres in terms of building a house. So the town is aware of the transaction and in effect is the enforcer, if that's a good word. But they're not involved in the financial aspect at all.
I'm not gonna be the enforcement.
They
I don't
can't.
I don't
really
think-
get enforced.
well,
I mean,
No, I would question whether they should, instead of being, maybe there needs to be rewritten, but instead of the town being the enforcer, maybe that it's like, set up like a conservation easement or a conservation deed, like you do with
well, yeah, it's a
subdivisions.
deeded thing, yes.
Okay,
It
Yeah.
would be certainly of record. but,
Of record.
you know, there just should be some mechanism in place that the town knows that there are restrictions associated with this lot.
Yeah,
So when somebody comes to Jim for a building permit and, you know, he's got, the record says, well, I can allow you to build on 1 acre and a 2 acre zone because you've
right.
acquired those. But that, you know, we can put a mechanism in place that just gets the town in the mix, so to speak. The question is whether we should be in the mix from the start in terms of what development rights are being purchased.
Well, we're working with a draft here for
I know, but I'm just,
2009.
as you were
So-
reading that and say, what, you know, shouldn't we have some say, since it's going to impact the community on whether in fact the development rights that are being purchased are development rights that are worthwhile for
Right.
the community.
There's gotta be some sort of,
Well,
review of
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
qualitative nature of
My
that.
understanding would be the town would accept however the final draft comes out, but in terms of language, the town would accept the concept of TDRs and the mechanism by which they happen. I guess the point I was getting at, going back to the original language, is the town has nothing to do with the money.
No.
no.
That's the bottom line.
They're
So
not gonna, it's,
the
I would
town's
expect
not
the town
going
to fund it.
Right, the town's not gonna fund it, the town is not going to support it, the town's not gonna put a bounty out and say, you know, if you do this for your land, we're gonna give you a tax break, or, you know.
Can't do that anyway.
Town's got nothing to do with the financial transaction. Certainly the town needs to know about the deed restriction and all of that stuff, yes. So,
And also, in any land banking or TDR, there's also qualitative. I mean, you know, it's not just, that's the problem with it. It's not just any piece of land. You can't take a piece of wetland back in the back 40 off of Dennett Road. I'm not talking about yours, I'm talking about some others out there. And, because I've had this discussion. And just because you're taking this mud hole here and saying, well, that gives me rights to do this up here. Well, you know, that's not necessarily a valuable deal. Town's saying why is that a big deal? You know, it's not. Or let's say that land that's around the subdivision. You know, when we do our cluster, we always have that, what I call the donut design. Where I have, the lots are all shrunk in, so we have this 15-foot wide open space all the way around the whole subdivision. We have a giant donut. Land's useless. You know, that's not, no self-respecting land trust will take it. Certainly that should be part of the TDR. So there has to be some targeted preservation that yields a really beneficial result for the town that would warrant them giving additional density.
right,
So they're in a negotiation position. You can't leave the town high unless they say, okay, here's our list of target parcels, or here's our list of target types of land that we want to see done. You got to meet those qualifications. I could do that.
all right, so if the language, the TDR language that we have thus far was basically a draft proposal. It needs a ton of work, I'm sure. But if the language was developed to the point where it was acceptable to the town, then it might be a matter of, okay, I have X number of acres, and I'm going to come to the planner or the CEO and say, do my acres fit the qualifications? Can I do this? And you say, yes, you can do it with these 15 acres, you can't do it with these 15 acres, but you've got these, you can. And then I'm in a position maybe to seek out a developer who somebody in the town might even be aware of and say, look, I've got this, do you want it?
Right.
Yeah, okay, so that's, but again, the town has no financial interest in any of that, it's just
You don't
interest in
want any
process.
interest in it.
Right.
You don't like handling your
Well, unless it's mine and tax time, but that's a whole different discussion.
That's different.
I'm not quite where I'm going with that, but I mean, in terms of, you need objective standards when we're talking about this. We just can't either we decide out of the gate, these are the areas.
These are the targets.
Right.
The targets, but you know, you can do that, but you can't just have, well, you gotta develop some objective standards.
Well, right.
You know, you just can't have Jim or Tad or anybody decide, that ain't gonna do it.
No, you either qualify or you don't,
Right.
because you don't, especially in any small town, you don't want to be in a position of saying, okay, well, you got to do it with your life because you're special,
That's right.
and they blew me away
That's
because they don't like me. It's just, right,
Yeah, you gotta stay away from that. And that's gonna be hard to do unless
It's
you target.
very dangerous. yeah.
right, so.
Very hard to do, just try to set standards. If the town decides to target areas or parcels, I think that's probably a better way to go.
Eliminates that.
You can make that decision. If it doesn't fit
Right,
in those already predetermined areas, then it doesn't work.
yeah.
Rather than have somebody try to decide whether it met the standard or not.
Yeah.
So
Just to
the,
suggest, I mean, I
the,
guess.
the language in that's going to have to be as carefully
Yeah.
crafted as everything we do.
Yeah, implement it, and frankly speaking, that's not just gonna be limited to select, to the planning board, I think selectmen all wanna be part of
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Yeah,
But this paragraph definitely needs to.
yeah, that needs work, so. Anyway, that was the one thing that jumped out at me. Shall we start our rewrite?
Or are you looking for people to kind of take this back after the meeting, kind of mull it over, throw something together, email it to you so you can come together to the next meeting if possible?
We can do that.
Well,
Yeah, what we're
We
trying,
can brainstorm.
what we're trying to
You
do.
guys just said that this doesn't fit, so.
Well,
What's out there? I'm wondering, can you explain that to me, why you don't think it works?
it doesn't, well, the idea was to keep R4 open and conserved.
Right.
And we've got all these subdivisions, you know.
Many of them are family divisions.
I think,
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
the,
that's-
I think the point was is that when it happened, I think they were trying to push people more into the 1 acre area
Well, yeah,
and
that was-
less
that was
out of the
that
R4.
was- That was for.
Except it seems to
It hasn't
have
happened.
done the opposite. They're not going to the 1 acre, they're going out to the R4. Myself personally, they live down my road, I don't have an issue with it.
But I don't, as Tad said, I don't think they're subdivisions that are coming for the planning board for approval. They're
Oh,
just.
well, you look at over here though, you've
Oh,
got
yeah.
Kayla Drive, you've got Timber.
But those are
Ridge,
old ones. I'm talking about.
You've got Lackawanna, that's new.
How new is that?
Fairway Drive, that's in
Oh,
R4.
yeah, Fairway
down-
Drive's pretty.
Fairway Drive's new,
I
Lackawanna's
know, I live
new.
down there, there's
Yeah.
like a whole bunch of new ones.
Lackawanna's fairly new, that's right off.
All the ones off Thompson Road.
I mean,
It's like-
Foxcroft is
Yeah, that's-
older, but it's still, since the comp plan, isn't it, or?
And then you have
That's
one
the-
houses that out there that are from family divisions.
Mm.
There are a lot. So,
Right, but there's quite a few developments
Yeah,
out there
we're
that are not
commercial.
family
Yeah, we're commercial.
divisions. Kayla Drive was after the comp plan was passed.
and we had and the reason why is multifold. The first one is that a lot of people want larger lots.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, right now, we have a provision in our ordinance that won't let them have them. Because we require cluster development in this town. We require it, which drives people. In fact, I just had a discussion with a landowner in the last 2 days in which he was going with family division because he wants large lots and he can't get it in his location because of that restriction on all subdivisions having to be clustered.
So is that a counterproductive thing?
I think it is. I think it is and it isn't. I mean, I think it's produced some good projects,
But
but I
could
think
we
at
put
the same
both?
time, it's also kept some from occurring. You'll never get an equestrian subdivision with cluster requirements. Can't happen. So,
Could we put language in there though, Todd? Say they want to do cluster. We could leave cluster in there.
Just
but
make
it's
it
still
optional.
won't. Right. Or could we put something in there to allow them to not cluster and have larger lots?
Ken,
Where we don't have that option today.
planning board has rejected that because I already brought that.
Why?
Because basically they believe that the cluster provision is actually working. It's actually reducing the amount of road construction. It's also creating more compact development and is preserving more land. I'm not sure I agree. Especially because the minimum lot size is so small, it's 6 acres,
Right.
that's nothing.
Well, like where Tom is, I mean, you have kind of a development out on Bittersweet.
That's
but
an
it's
approved
all-
subdivision.
But, yeah, but it's larger lots, so
10
people
lots,
can
yeah,
have
10 acre
horses
lots.
and have,
Right.
and just like on Curtis Road where Evan Jones had 40-acre
Right.
lots, I mean, you know, those aren't bad, you know, if they allow for people to have small farm, like gentleman farmers or whatever you want to call it.
And,
It's not a bad concept.
and that's, and the issue is that if you're going to do, and I'm dealing with a developer who wants to have large lots,
10-acre
centered
lots.
around a development, centered around a horse center. And it's an equestrian development, and they have their own, they can have riding areas in their lots, but they have a central stable that will serve everybody there for riding purposes, indoor riding and grooming and boarding and so forth, but then they can keep it on their own lots too, and the focus is horse people, and that's what he's looking at, yeah. Right now, the zoning's not gonna allow it.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
One quick one, is that in R4 potentially? Okay. Second question. I love data. Could we find out, that was a you, we.
Yeah, I know that. I understand the Victorian phrase there.
Let's say since 2005, but I'd almost like to go back a little further to 2000, find out how many clustered subdivisions in general, but family subdivisions and clustered broken out, we have had in R4
For X number of years.
since 2000 or wherever, you know, pick
Some of the
start.
family divisions are
Yeah,
gonna be a
'cause-
little harder to track, although, I mean, you can track them from the air. I can go in the aerials and see them.
Yeah. I mean,
But
because
the dates are gonna be progressive.
I don't want to address a problem that doesn't exist, but by the same token, the perception is that maybe this is a problem we need to address.
True, and it may not be a big problem, or if we have another way, if we have another escape clause or an incentive, actually another incentive basis in which to let people have more flexibility in design,
Yep.
then we can get around the cluster, the intent of the cluster. And one of the things I wanted to talk about was establishing a system of density bonuses for design that preserves critical views and rural character. Now, that's very, very general, but what it would be is it would require the planning board to start looking at the land and what makes that look rural to the neighborhood and to the town. And then if they put the development or put developments in areas or lay it out in a certain way that it preserves vistas and the sense of openness, then you can have any damn acreage you want, or you can cluster it as much as you want. And if you do it a certain way, we'll even give you extra number of lots, which that's where you really, right now, our cluster development doesn't reward you for anything. It only allows you to reduce the amount of road frontage that you have. It's really that's the real benefit. And that's nice, but in a
not
big development, it's not
insignificant.
enough. It can be a good incentive,
Yeah.
but if you can get more lots for doing something, if you get that's a real bonus. There's a real bonus that you can do something with.
But I hate to lose, you know, it drives me crazy when you hear about losing developments where they want to do big lawns. And they want to do something that's agriculture, like horses and stuff, because we don't have a mechanism to allow it. We'll let you put all the houses together and put them in one little area, but we won't allow you to preserve, 10-acre blocks or 15-acre blocks.
Remember the context. Back when this was written, we were in a building boom. And
Yeah.
any piece of land
Oh, yeah.
that looked like it was developable, people were knocking on doors.
I
And
know,
you
I
had to-
have plenty of letters.
And you had
Yeah.
plenty of,
And I
you know
mean,
this
we were-
firsthand. And so that's why you
The
put
growth
in your
permits
growth,
were-
you put in your growth permit, because it was out of control. It was going up everywhere. There was no control. So that's why they did this as, it wasn't meant to be a speed bump, but it served as a speed bump. And it was intended also to make developers be, start using the resource a little bit better. The problem is that they could narrow down the size of the lot, and produce what I said, the donut shape. And you can see the donuts all up here. They're all donuts. There's no large tract of land that's preserved. It's just little pieces of it.
Right.
So, and that's what's making it not work.
Right.
It's not that the gross area is not being preserved. It's the location of the acreage and the aggregation of the acreage that's not occurring as a result of that. And that means that we've got to come up with another mechanism to do that. Now you can force people to do that, but I find incentives work so much better.
Well, if we go back and do a little history on this, when we first discussed R4 and minimum lot size, the how many acres was the serious question. I think we all agreed that 3 acres isn't rural conservation. It's ridiculous. We tried to get 5 acres passed. That didn't fly. As I'm sitting here and saying, okay, we have subdivisions like Tom lives in where we've got 10-acre lots. Well, that exceeds by a factor of 300% what our minimum is. That's nice. Maybe there should be more of that allowed to happen as opposed to these little clustered subdivisions, which don't look rural to me, but
No, they aren't. No, the intent
But
is they're supposed to be tucked away somewhere, and then you leave a big piece of land. That was the original intent. I mean, theoretically, even if you talk to Randall Arendt, who invented this junk, this mechanism. Sorry, Randall tracks us, by the way. He's been in touch with me about it. How's it going? I said, I don't think so good. But I mean, that was the intent.
Yep.
Preserve the field here, tuck everything over here. But we haven't put that mechanism in. We just leave it open and say you can have less area, you can build less road, and so you get these donut developments as a result. We've got to be more focused on achieving the result, which is preserve the rural area. And one of the reasons probably why the 5 acres failed was because there was no reward if you did something a little better. Maybe if it was 5 acres, or you get it 2 acres. If you do X, Y, and Z.
The perception of a lot of landowners was that 5 acres represented a tremendous restriction in terms of what they were able to do with their land down the road. I mean, because land is an investment, and what you ultimately do with it might depend upon changing conditions. You might have a 50-acre piece and have all intentions of keeping it open forever, but then you have a long-term illness and you have to sell the land off. Well, if I can sell 3-acre lots, that's a lot more beneficial to me as a landowner than if I can only sell 5-acre lots or 10-acre lots. So 3 seemed. Remember, when this whole thing started, the entire town was 2-acre zoning. We had one zone. It was Arundel, and it was 2 acres. Those were the good old days. And then it was a matter of, okay, if we're going to do this, focus this here and that there, we reduced to the R1 to 1 acre, R2 stayed 2 acres, and then, well, what do we do with R4? Well, it had to go up. And the first attempt, as I said, was 5 acres. That was not where the discussion started, but that was the first attempt at a vote, and that was resoundingly rejected because of that impact on, what can I do with my land? Well, I can't do as much if you make it a 5-acre minimum.
You think the temperatures change?
No,
No?
no.
The temperature's changed if you have a recourse.
If you can offer the landowners something to make up for that perceived loss,
Right, exactly.
then maybe.
Okay.
Could you make up for that by allowing some degree of development? I'm thinking in terms of the western part of Route 111. Let's say from the Lyman town line coming in, let's just for talking purposes say as far as Clutier's. If we were to allow any commercial type development along 111 in that section, would that aid any of the landowners out in that area as far as getting some value out of their land?
Jeez, I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
No, yes.
that only affect a few in
Yeah,
there.
very
A few.
Yeah.
Very few, okay.
The problem is some of us, because that's a strip. It's a strip that goes down. It doesn't, that one doesn't go by property lines either, does it, Donna?
Yeah.
No.
No. No, that's
Overlay zone?
the
Well,
overlay.
the overlay zone is,
That's
you'll have to make a decision about
That's
that.
visual.
Yeah,
Yes.
visual.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because that
What
still
is it?
stands.
Yeah, we
But-
need to make a decision.
Right, but isn't there a description as to how far back it goes from 111?
No, the description is the map.
Okay.
It's basically what, 500 feet and then 1,000 feet.
It's areas where they're open, where they're.
Yeah, but in terms of
perceived-
actual distance
Yeah,
on
it's
the map.
about
Five.
five to about 800, I think was what I read.
Right, and what
Almost
happens is,
1,000 in some places.
what happens is that you have properties like mine that are split.
Yeah, well, there.
So the
a lot.
whole front is in one, the back is in another.
But the overlay zone, it's really not a different district.
No.
It's still R4.
It's an overlay.
Yeah, it doesn't.
It just requires agricultural buildings, agricultural looking buildings to be built in that.
Don't even get me started.
So you build a hut with a cupola. Get over it.
Or
but-
you take a shed, lean it against the 47 Dodge, and it's
There you go. Going back to John's question, though, we as we discuss R4 is in many places in town. It's basically what, 2/3 of the town or half of the town
It's
anyway.
at least half.
So it's not just the 111 corridor. Obviously, it also extends all the way down the river, and it's also on the eastern end there, surrounding what used to be R3. So there's a lot of R4, and as we discuss it, we need to take into account that it's all of it. So,
Yeah, and we also have to take into consideration that really R4 is in the western part, because the R4 that we have on this
Yes,
side
unbuildable.
is almost unbuildable. Everything on this side of the railroad tracks is unbuildable.
yeah,
Everything
again,
down
Pat.
here, I mean, this is the Great Arundel Swamp in here.
Right.
So,
And Todd, what was the rationale with the planning board with not wanting to do large lot subdivisions?
I think they were concerned about undermining the cluster development provision, because they
How?
thought they were achieving some goals there. Less roads, smaller
Well, you can
lots.
still have less roads if you have 10-acre lots. You can still have one road going in.
Yeah, it's the length of the road. If you have a 10-acre lot, unless you're doing patent spaghetti lots, that's a lot of frontage you're gonna be having on the road. Your road, for instance, how much frontage some of those lots have like 600-700 feet of frontage. For one lot, 700 feet of frontage, and you're double loaded, but in some cases you're not double loaded.
But see, I'm sorry.
But that's
I-
right.
Lots
see,
on both
I don't,
sides,
see, I don't see an issue with that.
Well,
To me, that's rural.
That's why I say I'm wondering whether we should take the temperature of the R4 folks at this point in time, see whether the attitude is different from.
Oh, I have no objections to taking the temperature.
Because
I'm not even- I'm not even-
Diana, I think would agree that unbelievably.
What I'm saying is,
have that on tape.
what I'm saying is, I'm not even sure we have to change the acreage. You could put in a mechanism that said, instead of cluster subdivisions in the R4 area, you can do large lot subdivisions. They have to be 10+ acre lots,
that's 10 acre zoning,
and you
which
can
is
do,
what Auburn does, quite
and you can do large lot subdivisions.
But
Lyman
you
does
don't.
that too, don't they?
But you don't
Yeah.
have to do that because you can still do the cluster subdivision.
Yes.
So you're giving people a choice.
That's, and 10 acres, it looks more rural than 3 acres.
But 5 acres is good too.
5 acres is good. 10 acres is better if you're trying to preserve it. And then if you get 3 acres or 2 acres out of that, man, that's a real bonus there. Say, oh, okay, I'm going to do a cluster of 3 acre lots, or 2 acre lots or whatever. And I have to tuck it over here in the woods, and we'll leave this field out here open, that kind of thing. and I'm making out like a bandit.
How
Or
big-
I could do big 10-acre lots. I've
How big
got
are yours?
50 acres and I have 5 lots. you
Tom,
know?
are the lots out on yours all like 10 acres?
In excess of, they had to be, and back in '75, I talked to Ted about that. If you had a subdivision like ours, I can't remember, it was 50 acres or whether it was more than 5 lots, it was one of the two. In addition to planning board review, you had to get DEP, site location approval as well. And the way you avoided that is having lots in excess of 10 acres, so that's what the developer did.
Right.
See, and to me, I think that's, I think we ought to find a mechanism to make something like that work. Because I think that I think that preserves far more land than any of the cluster subdivisions that have gone down on Thompson Road, I can tell you.
Well, it's like when Eben did split his 40-acre lots. I think that's much more conservation than the cluster.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, you know, it's more spread out, certainly.
Right.
It's more of a rural feel out there.
And I'm
because you
not
have
worried
large
about a
lots.
big road going in, because I still don't think that takes up that much of it. And if they're deed restricted so that they have to stay 10 acres, they're not gonna be split.
I think it was part of it was because this was still in the anti-sprawl era. The cost of sprawl was big, all planners were big into the cost of sprawl. Let's reduce down sprawl. And then it was also economics. Building a road is expensive, and building a road with 400, 500 feet frontage
if they
for each
want
lot
to,
is big.
If that's what they wanna do.
Terrific. If you want to do that market-wise, I don't think there's an impact on the landscape, frankly speaking. I think that's a great idea. I think little houses spring up like weeds out in the middle of a field looks terrible compared to large lots like we have on Curtis Road. Let's be honest. You go out on Curtis Road, the buildings are way spread all over the place, and those are large lots out there, and that looks rural.
And
Some of
then
these
maybe we
others,
need to-
some of these clusters, as you say, don't look rural at all.
And if we rewrite some of the
It
street
is look.
ordinances, I mean, do they all have to be paved? If it's a rural look and you want to maintain
They
10-acre
wanna
lots
maintain
and they
their
want to
own
have a
dirt
dirt
road,
road,
then let them
I
maintain
have
their
no.
own dirt road.
Right.
I think I don't know, that standard goes back to 1993 was when you guys first implemented it. It might have been in the 80s, actually. Because you know what? Those road standards are the state standard. That was the state standard at the time, which is why we used DOT type D gravel. Because it was cheap back then. Now it's not.
No, it's not.
Another piece of this puzzle takes us way back to the beginning, when we started talking about the mixed-use districts and increasing the opportunities for businesses. Part of the rationale for that whole discussion was shifting the tax base so that we had more businesses contributing more of the taxes and fewer homes, particularly homes with children, who in turn had an impact on the school. So another question I have, which might require some research, apart from, is what we have been doing working? How does what we have been doing impact the population? Do you, if you allow for 10-acre lots, do you ultimately get fewer homes and by virtue of that fewer children in the school system than if you allow these cluster subdivisions? How does one weigh against the other? If cluster subdivisions net you more houses and more kids, then that's another argument for allowing larger lots and therefore fewer houses and fewer children. If it goes the other way, or if it's a wash, then that's not a factor. But
Oh, can take a look at that one too.
Yeah,
That's
well,
an
the
interesting-
demographic of people who buy large lots, whether they are more inclined to have kids or not, or whether they are at that stage in their life where maybe they're just looking for open
Quiet,
space.
quiet.
This gentleman,
She said quiet.
I think it's actually the demographic, my guess would be that market group would be childless or have
Yeah.
a couple kids in college.
that's another good.
Looks like I got less than an acre and I got 2 more breasts. I mean, 2 more children.
And I
Baby maker.
have more than 3 acres.
Not
and I have no
anymore.
children.
No, my yard
But I
right
have
now
that
is about
big.
13 acres, and that's his yard to play in. Stay in the
So-
yard, I tell him.
There we go.
So we have good questions.
Well, I mean, this is a problem that I think has been bothering a lot of people for a while. That did our R4 work, and I think everybody is in consensus that it's not accomplishing what we wanted to do on a variety of fronts. And so, I think this is the time to start looking at seriously at coming up with alternative solutions.
Well, with the
Larger
tax-
lots may be one of the solutions, contrary to what state planning was. Oh, they're gone, aren't they?
Yeah.
That's right.
With the tax aspect in mind, should we consider allowing things like congregate care facilities in the R4?
The only thing with that is there's not a lot of services around or something. It's, you know, most of those places like to have different things available for residents
Oh,
nearby.
I don't know, you'd be
Have them near
surprised.
trailhead.
You'd be
Next to the
surprised, because a lot of
microbrewery.
them, a lot of them are locked down. They don't, a lot of them, they don't, I mean, they go out within their own,
Feel like
little property, but they don't,
Alzheimer's facilities.
yes.
That way they have like a central courtyard, which is
Yep.
a building all
Yep.
the way around it, so no one can get away.
And everything's gated. Everything's gated and locked
But
down.
there are other communities that
That
people are
aren't.
not at
No.
that level of.
Well, those are
function.
assisted, that's assisted living.
But they're they're congregate
They're congregate-
houses, a number of them up in
Apartment.
Falmouth and other
Yeah.
places like
Right.
that that
Yeah.
are. that
They have
people-
different levels of
Yeah.
security,
Yeah.
going from
Even
cottage
when you
completely
do
independent all the way
Right,
to
Yeah.
yeah.
in-house.
And if you look at the 111 area,
Especially
they
111.
are not all that far from facilities like,
No.
Yeah.
Biddeford Crossing.
Southern
It's really
Maine.
just a
Yeah.
couple of
Yeah,
miles
that's true.
down the road.
And you know something, the nice thing about that? They don't have, sorry, but I have one, they don't have.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the
That's what
hospital.
I was saying, Diane, about the tax aspect. You get people
Yes.
living there, but you don't have the drawback of having to pay for education,
Right,
for a lot of young kids.
Just more medical runs and everything.
Yes, but that you charge for those.
but you know something, I'm not sure that the medical runs are any more than the medical runs for people who have kids.
Well, I disagree with that, but
Yeah, they are, yeah.
I don't think that
Yeah.
packs. I don't think
Yeah,
that
I don't think that's-
ambulance and stuff is.
No.
I don't think
I
that's a
don't-
big deal.
Compared to the
I think
ambulance run
when
compared
you
to
get to that
educating a
age, a
child.
lot of the time you
No,
get
but
one
$700
run.
$700 a run versus $7,000 a year.
No, it's more than that.
I'm sure that. That's right. We're an RSU 21. Okay, 10,000 a year.
That's untrue, Tad. We shouldn't say that.
Okay, 12,000 a year.
It isn't that.
I know. What is it? It's about 8, isn't it? I think it's about 8. Maybe 85. I think last time I checked.
No, I think it's more than that.
More than that?
It's in the nines.
Is
When
it
you
really
count-
in the nines?
Depending on the age, right?
Sure.
It's in the nines.
In the
It's
kindergarten.
5 figures, yeah, but it's getting there.
But I think it also allows people, if people want to have a garden, if they want to have chickens, if they want to have a horse,
Right.
it allows them to be able to do those things. Where in some of these cluster subdivisions, you still can't do that.
No, because there's covenants that prevent you from doing it, and the lots are just frankly too small.
And I think some of the people are buying some of these other lots because one of the things they don't like about the cluster subdivisions is that you're still neighbor on top of neighbor on top of neighbor. You might as well be living in town.
Right. And this is the push that state planning was doing for a long period of time.
Yes, I know.
And they're gone, and maybe it's time that this goes too.
When did we put the cluster mandatory provision in, do you remember?
I can look it up.
Is that 95?
I think it was 95.
I think it was 90. It might be in the 90s because that's when Randall first
I
came
think
up
it
with
was
his book.
95.
And the subdivisions that you promised, are they pre-1995?
Never done farm.
Fairway Acres isn't, I don't think.
On that
Where
was
would it
wild.
fit?
Oh, Fairway is just
Yeah.
brand new.
Yeah.
Brand new,
Brand new.
not cluster.
They did cluster.
Oh, they did.
Oh, yeah, they cluster.
Oh,
Yeah, they're way up,
Yeah.
they're way up over here.
Yeah.
Not so much
This is
appeal.
down right here. And
Foxcroft
then-
didn't cluster.
And he's right.
No.
It sounds like a real good idea, but it just doesn't seem to work out that you get much open space.
Yeah.
Well,
Kayla Drive is
This is,
clustered.
I think this is Lackawanna right here. And
And they've got restrictions. I think they only have, I think they might only have one
Caleb.
lot that might have access
Maybe-
off Days Mills
I'm trying to
Road.
think if that's
Maybe not. I
Foxcroft.
think
They
it
might have
has
clustered
access
Foxcroft.
off the end of Kayla
I
Drive.
wanna know why we don't have a map
This
of the
goes
names of the
back
roads.
I know.
quite a
Drives me
ways.
nuts.
Yeah.
Because
We do, but
the
it's very
last time it
funny.
was amended it was amended in 2008. But
I think
if
it goes back
if
to
that's the only
95.
if that's the only amendment in here,
Mm-hmm.
because Sim, you're really good at putting the amendment dates in here. This has got to be from the original '95.
Yeah.
So it's old.
I
Yeah.
know, I was on it.
There you go.
Yes.
All right. So
I believe
you
so.
know,
You're old
Right.
too.
Yeah, I know.
Say,
The little one tells me that all the time.
no, it's not wrong, Diane.
No, he's not.
things change.
It's just like another sentence that I think we have, the sentence above, the creation of new lots fronting on existing arterial and collector roads will be restricted.
Yeah, what did that
Why?
start, right?
Setbacks,
Yeah.
to me, are just kind of, that's another thing that needs to be revised. I mean, just because I'm in
100-foot setback.
the R3,
Oh, yeah, don't-
100-foot
oh.
setbacks, I don't think hardly anybody ever meets that. And what's the use of, if I have a 3-acre parcel and I have to set myself into the middle of it, I'm doing the same thing as the donut thing on a subdivision.
Right.
If I can get closer to the road but buffer it, put a nice row of trees or keep whatever and make, so then at least the back acreage is together instead of sitting the house in the middle of the lot so that I can have a long driveway that I have to plow and everything else just to meet the setback is creating the same donut thing with all your lots that,
Exactly. Well,
you know.
I mean that's what setbacks do anyways. Is they
Right.
create they have a tendency of creating donuts that way.
Yeah.
And 100 feet, for some reason, 100 feet just really doesn't yell, scream rural to me.
No.
It's not that far back enough to say, wow, that's way back. And
Yeah.
it's not, and it's inconvenient.
It is.
It really is.
The
And
cost of building.
the cost of
Right.
building them, which is
Yeah.
a little, and so if, maybe we need to look at performance-based stuff that achieves rural look, but doesn't
Right.
cost as much.
It seems to me that perhaps what's happened here is we've done death by compromise.
Yeah.
5 acres or 10 acres was too much, and we didn't want 2 acres. We compromised to 3, which didn't accomplish what we wanted it to. Setbacks, 100 feet is really not practical, doesn't accomplish anything, but it was as far as we could push it back without everybody saying no. And sometimes compromise is not the best answer to the problem. So I agree with Tad. I think if we can find some
Standards.
incentives and carrots that make people want to do it so it looks a certain way and accomplishes what a rural conservation area should accomplish, that's the way to go as opposed to the compromise approach. We're gonna make you do 10 acres by accident. You will want to do
And you
it.
know
You'll
something,
want to
if they
do
have
it.
10
Yeah,
acre
right, you
lots
want
in
it.
a subdivision and their house is 25 feet from the road, I don't care.
No, I don't care either.
Just give me a nice
I
chunk
don't know, I
of
don't wanna
land.
be that close to the driveway, roadway.
Well, it depends upon the road, right, yeah.
Well, my road is a driveway.
Well, yes.
Well, I'm saying if you have a subdivision where everybody, if you have a 10 unit subdivision of 10 acres, so you've got 100 acres. And you have 10 houses on that road. You shouldn't have to put your house like way out if you don't want to. If you want to be 35 feet from the line, you should be able to. I guess my issue is in the other residential areas, their frontage and side setbacks are so much different. Why? A house is a house is a house is a house, no matter where you put it.
I think that's what Sim said. They want to put it in the middle of the lot, because rural means you can't see your neighbor as well. But 10 feet makes that much difference.
Well, no, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
It
It really doesn't.
No.
If you don't want to see your neighbor, you want to put your house where you don't see your neighbor. Not where 35 feet versus 25 feet. Ooh.
Right.
Yeah,
And so,
and you have to be a good distance away not to see your neighbor.
huge
I mean,
distance.
I'm a good distance away from all of my neighbors, and I can see every one of them, because
Open fields.
sight works that way.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, your house isn't that 100 feet from the road.
No, it isn't.
So, you
No.
know.
Mine is.
I wish it was 1,000 feet from the road. That's a whole
Yeah, I'm
different
sure.
issue. So, all right.
Are there any safety concerns though with working with well-traveled roads, arterial roads and those types of things in terms of setbacks from those, as opposed to
That's what I
setbacks from
wonder.
private ways or something like that?
You need people careening off into your living room?
Yeah, exactly.
That's why we have the bank.
And the
Wade
trees.
Perry had one go 500 feet into
I
his
mean,
yard.
yes.
Yeah.
There are some safety issues, I mean, in terms of
There are some
roadway.
safety issues
Either
on,
that or also, well, yeah, but
on
the
Route
thing is
111.
too, the land use ordinance names, I think, too many as arterial.
yeah, well,
And it defines,
it
you know,
really
if you look
does.
at the land use ordinance,
That
I
may
mean,
be,
I
but
can
I
see
just-
111 and Route 1 as being arterial. Limerick Road maybe, but, I mean, when it starts naming off all these other roads as arterial, you know, or
Old Post
collectors,
Road.
yeah, yeah, those, you know.
It's
Yeah.
more capillary than anything.
Correct.
I like that. Yeah, it is capital.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a new
There's gotta be,
classification.
there's
for
gotta
you.
be a better way.
There is a better
Yeah.
one. And you know, if you're concerned about safety on 111, which is a speed highway, okay, that's one thing.
Mhm.
But you know, Thompson Road, I'm sorry, it's not.
Right.
It's not arterial. I mean, in terms, what they're looking at is the amount of ADT, the average daily traffic. That's what they're basing it on. Now, I don't know what that threshold is, because it certainly isn't the state threshold, which is 20,000. So, Thompson Road does not have 20,000
No.
vehicles a day. So, it was just a relative threshold that the planning board and, the planner did at that time, saying, well, these are the roads that are most traveled. These are the roads most traveled by, and these are the
I
roads
think it
least
was- This is a
traveled
road
by.
that leads to somewhere else, is when
Right.
they named it.
Yeah.
That's really what it was.
Yeah, it looks that way, yeah.
Yeah.
And everything else is local.
Is it a
Everything else is
connector?
local.
Is it
So,
connected?
I mean, we could come up, and Tom brings up a good point, come up with different standards for different roads, and it doesn't really hurt to do that, because, especially if it's safety-based, that's a legitimate reason, it's defensible in court, and you can also defend it to people, too, to the populace, saying, do you want a tractor-trailer truck in your living room?
Do we have traffic counts on any of the roads in town?
Only on state roads. We do not do counts on ours. I
Well,
could sit there out there and do.
It's probably not
Todd
so
would
much
not
a
like that.
function of number of vehicles as it is the speed limit on the road.
Yeah.
I don't think the limit on the road has anything to do with it.
Well,
I think actually,
and there's
there's
also-
another thing to talk about. If you want rural, let's talk about horizontal alignment and vertical alignment. Vertical alignment less, horizontal alignment more. Remember, speed is also based on curve radii. How safe do you feel going 50 miles an hour around this 125-foot radius curve? Ooh, that's a dangerous curve. And you think about Thompson Road and some of those curves out there, right? You aren't going 50 on Thompson Road
Oh
unless
no,
you're.
the tree on the corner has saved that trailer I don't know how many times.
Bingo.
Although I'd like to take the tree down so it would take the trailer out. But then down by Melody,
Oh,
I mean,
yes, that's the
they
other-
drove right through that corner and right into the guy's garage.
Oh my God.
And he's like way off the road.
Yeah.
I mean, they went right through his wall of bricks. They went through. I mean, it was like.
More trees.
I don't think that we can possibly write an ordinance that would eliminate all the possibilities.
They aren't.
I mean, I've had people on
You
my
can't do
lawn
something
twice,
that's
not
idiot
because
proof.
they came off 111, but because they came out of Limerick Road and never stopped. And one of them was a sheriff's deputy. So, yes, that was the first one.
Went right up your driveway and into
Oh,
the
no,
water?
right into our
No.
trees.
No, not into the trees. If you get the line of sight from Limerick Road, the bank of my driveway on the left hand side is dead ahead. He went, and I was at the sink. I still see it. I had turned my head to talk to John, and when I turned back, I saw a car landing because he went up the bank, went airborne, and then dropped
Yes.
onto the lawn. And then I said, John, you want to call somebody? We have a deputy on the lawn. And he was fine, but he crossed 111 during rush hour, not at 40 miles an hour,
God.
and
Lights
he
and sirens?
didn't get hit.
How's that possible?
And it was his day to survive.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Because coming out of that road is.
Right. And then somebody else did it last year in the middle of the night and just drove off, and I never saw that one, but I knew it happened
And I
because
mean,
I could
it's
see the
happened,
landing
it's
pattern.
happened to me twice on Limerick Road too, once into that row of pines and once up the whole field across and across our fence and into the yard.
I'm just glad I got a big ditch in front of my house.
The ditch
They'll
helps.
fly, they'll fly.
Yeah, because that sucked up when 3 drunk vehicles in the past 5 years and a motorcyclist just this past summer.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so we're not
so
going
it's
to close
speed.
drainage systems anymore.
Right, I don't know the
Drainage,
setbacks and
yeah,
ordinances.
Oh, you bet. It's
Yeah.
gonna be
Solve
extra
that
deep.
particular problem.
Yeah.
All right, we're after 9 o'clock, so
We're not
I'm
really
gonna make
approved.
a couple suggestions if I may. We have lots to think about in terms of R4 and what might improve the situation. So let's do that between now and our next meeting. The next official meeting for our group, January 6th, the first thing we're going to do is meet with those half a dozen landowners that have those split lots. Hopefully after that, we'll still have time to do some more of this. So we'll kind of plan for that. And then next week, on the 11th, we have the joint meeting with the planning board. So if all of you could make that.
That's on Thursday.
That's on Thursday, yep, the 11th.
Here.
A week from this Thursday. So
We might start a little bit later because the planning board has 2 items they have to do beforehand. Their meeting starts at 6:30.
So if we're there,
hopefully
if
we'll
we're
get it
there
done.
at 7, we won't have too long a wait before we're up. And then we can advise the planning board as to what we have been doing and why. But our discussion with them is going to be just R1, R2, R3, because we're done with that.
And I will circulate to them the finalized version of our descriptions of R1 and R2. And do you want the talking points sent to them too?
Yeah, let me clean them up and get rid of the word storage first, and then
Okay.
I'll shoot them over to you.
And then I'll disseminate it to them.
Okay, that works.
Okay.
Okay, so, now, Sean?
Would you like a motion to adjourn for the night?
Love a motion to adjourn.
Well, I think I can handle that.
I'll second
make
it.
a motion to adjourn for this evening.
All those in favor? Thank you all for coming. See you soon.